Hello, everybody. My name is Jim Farmer. I am the outreach director for GALECA, the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics. We put on the Dorian Awards every year, which awards the best in film, TV, and now theater. We're very, very excited to be speaking to Vera Drew from the phenomenal The People's Joker. I'm going to read a brief description of the film, and then we're going to jump into some questions. In this absurdist, autobiographically inspired dark comedy, a painfully unfunny, aspiring clown, Vera Drew, as Joker the Harlequin, grapples with her gender identity while unsuccessfully attempting to join the ranks of Gotham City's sole comedy program in a world where comedy has been outlawed. Uniting with a ragtag team of rejects and misfits, Joker the Harlequin forms an illegal anti comedy troupe that puts her on a collision course with a devious Cape Crusader controlling the city. Vera, thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thanks for having me.
And we were talking earlier, what an amazing year. I mean, not just the release of the film, but the critical acclaim for the film, and then the Breakthrough Director Award at the Gothams, and then the John Cassavetes Award nomination for the Independent Spirit Awards. And congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I really can't believe it. Like it's a movie that I really just kind of made for me and my friends, and I really thought like maybe we'd screen it once in like a warehouse for like 10 people and that'd be it. So like really any aspect of this year has kind of just been a dream beyond a dream. Like I'm just so grateful that how much attention and praise and how many people have gotten to see it at this point. It's really mind blowing to me.
As you mentioned a little bit earlier, Adrian Brody mentioned your name.
Yes, yes. No, it was really wild. There's like I was sitting because at the Gotham Awards we were seated really far from the stage. So the second I sat down, I assumed I wasn't going to win, and I was honestly okay with that just because like it was really crazy just being there. Like, just like walking around and just seeing like Sean Baker and like Demi Moore and stuff. Like I saw Nicole Kidman walk in and like I had this moment where I was like, that woman looks so familiar. I wonder like if she's friends with my mom or something. Like, no, that's Nicole Kidman. That's why you recognize her. It's actually Nicole Kidman. So like I really had felt like I had already won. And they played clips of all the movies that were nominees and stuff, and when they got to ours it was the whole sequence where I'm dancing down the stairs to a Prince parody, and I was just sitting there and I was like, this is better than any award I could ever win. Like there's just this room full of Hollywood elites like watching me dance to a Prince parody. And yeah, hearing Adrian Brody say my name, it's like I already won. But the second I saw Nicole Kidman walk in, I was sitting there going like I really want to win just so I can like shout her out on stage because I love her, and her art has just changed my life. I love her so much.
Let's walk a little bit back to 2022 when a certain media conglomerate sent you a letter. Can you sort of talk about that and how it affected
Yeah.
plans and how you've sort of moved on since then?
Yeah, I mean like the we got this we got this letter. It was actually on our very first press day for the movie, for The People's Joker. Like we had done all these interviews in Toronto, and I that was kind of the start of this whole like crazy, just like, oh my God, like I guess this is like a bigger deal than I ever thought it would be, because like we were literally like on our way to an interview and like I ran into Werner Herzog and it was just like, this is like way big. Like this is a movie I made in my apartment with like a bunch of like queer anarchists scattered throughout the world. I guess this is like a huge deal. I had never been to a film festival before. Um, and the first film festival I got to go to and have a movie in was TIFF, which is just huge. So like we ended that press day kind of just celebrating the fact that we were there. And I got a call from my manager, and she said, "Vera, are you sitting down?" And I was like, "Oh no!" Like I instantly knew what was happening. Like the second she said that, um, I think I burst into tears. Um, and you know, she basically said to me like, we got this letter from Warner Brothers basically saying they just don't think the film is a parody. And this is the night before our premiere. Like we're supposed to premiere in like 24 hours at TIFF, and like we're getting this letter. So I was like devastated. Um and thankfully, like, she was somebody that was like, we're gonna figure this out. Like, we're already here.
Mhm.
Like, you have a lot of people that like are like believe in this and really do see this as like a parody. So like let's get this going. Thankfully, my producer, Joey Lyons, very like drunkenly held me and just was like, it's gonna be okay, like we're here, and this is gonna like happen. And Tiff really did go to bat for us, especially Peter Kaplowski, who was the programmer of our section that the film premiered in. He spent the entirety of that day trying to get on the phone with somebody from Warner Brothers, and eventually got through to the head of Warner Brothers Canada. And we basically negotiated with them and came up with a plan that like we would screen the movie once
Mhm.
at TIFF, and then we would pull the movie from the rest of the festival. And the deal was, uh anytime I wanted to play the movie, I would have to show this letter that they had sent to film festivals or theaters or programmers that wanted to screen it. So it definitely made any prospect of it getting distribution seem a lot more complicated and like a pipe dream. Um, but it kind of put us in a position where we just had to be crafty and sort of punk, and the movie always was this sort of like punk thing. So we ended up doing like a lot of secret screenings, a lot of like DIY venues and stuff, and eventually got to have our like public facing US premiere at Outfest. Um, but yeah, it was a really long journey from that night and getting that letter from them to now. And it's the last thing I'll say about it is just like it was. I think the thing that was particularly hard about it was just like I had no intention. I didn't want to ruffle any feathers over there. Like I really was trying to make something that was a commentary on their characters and not like a breach of IP or anything like that. So it was quite frustrating and devastating, and we couldn't get a hold of anybody over there that was in our corner. Like I can't tell you how many letters I wrote to James Gunn, begging him to help us. But yeah, thankfully we found a way for it to get out there.
Congratulations. You were when you were asked to re-edit Joker, um, you begin to think about how, you know, some of these characters reflected on your own life. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, like it's weird because like that was a very I don't think when I started making it, I don't think I really realized how enmeshed with my identity Batman lore sort of was. Like it was something that kind of happened as I was working on it, because the film really started as an artistic commission. My friend Brie LaRose, who's a comedy writer out here in LA, commissioned me to re-edit Todd Phillips' Joker, sort of as a joke, but I take jokes way too far. And I started doing that. As I was doing that and sort of making this like experimental, like found footage movie, I had this memory resurface of going and seeing Batman Forever with my dad, and and seeing Nicole Kidman in the movie and kind of having this queer awakening. And I think just the movie itself, like kind of, it's so colorful, it's so like campy and operatic. It's basically just a really expensive gay art film in so many ways. And like and there's rubber nipples, of course, and very like S&M imagery. It's so like there's so much just like 90s queerness packed into this Batman movie that it was the first thing I saw that sort of gave me this queer awakening. And that was a memory that had been buried. I didn't remember that until I started working on the film. And that was when this idea sort of clicked that okay, like I could take these characters and sort of like transpose my life onto them as like a reflection and sort of like really treat comic book lore like a myth, because that's a thing that's shoved down our throats all the time, is that these are our modern myths, and sort of understand my own life through it. And I think Joker's always been a queer character, like in the comics. Like it's very the identity, the loose identity, the sort of toxic romance between him and Batman and stuff. Like it was all kind of there, and it seemed like a really exciting and sort of therapeutic way of just processing my life up until that point, as both as a trans woman and as somebody who worked in comedy and had made art.
Can you talk a little bit about your comedy career and how you got started?
Yeah, I got started really, really young. Um, I knew I had wanted to make films from the time I was like 6 years old. Like my earliest memories are like wanting to direct, and this was the 90s, and we didn't have these wonderful phones with cameras and stuff on them. Like I remember telling my parents. I have so many memories of like telling my parents like I want to make movies, and them just being like, what? How does anybody do that? So like the I kind of ended up becoming a real theater fag, and really like just getting really into performance, and that was kind of the closest I could get, and it leaded to me. I always really the thing I loved the most about like theater and acting school and stuff was improv classes, and thankfully I lived in Chicago, so I was able to like go to Second City, and I was a part of their like youth comedy program that they had there, and so started kind of doing sketch comedy and improv like I'd say when I was about like 13 or 14, and it saved my life. Like it really did. Like I can't stress that enough. Like having that as an outlet, um, like because I didn't know who I was. Like I had really no identity figured out, and here was this space where I could do drag and kind of be anybody and just sort of play and meet, I think the first gay person I ever met was at Second City. I remember
Really?
like actually the first like I think the first queer person I met at Second City was bisexual, and I had never even heard that word before, and I was like, whoa, you can, wow, cool. Like it really was this space for me to like kind of safely figure a lot of this stuff out, and I was pretty successful at it too at a young age. Like I had a sketch on the Second City Tour Co. by the time I was like 18, and ended up going to film school. And when I was in film school, I continued to do improv, but I really got into experimental film and kind of became a pretentious film snob. And that coincided with the sort of Adult Swim comedy boom. Like Tim and Eric's Awesome Show started airing, and I remember watching that and revisiting other comedy stuff that I was really into as a kid, like Mr. Show and Stella and all these things, and like kind of realizing like that was a space where you could sort of integrate like edgy comedy and experimental film and analog and all these things. So it was literally like my senior year of college. I just called Absolutely Productions, which is Tim and Eric's production company, and was like, "Do you guys need interns?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure." And I moved to LA and got an internship there, and like pretty much immediately got put to work on all these like iconic alternative comedy television shows. Like my first job was on the Eric Andre show season one, and then my second job was Nathan for You season one, and then I was an editor on Comedy Bang Bang and Tim and Eric Bedtime Stories and Check It Out with Steve Brule and all these kind of like late night cable stoner comedy shows and kind of climbed the production ladder and specifically focusing on post production because I had been editing from a very young age and you know, thankfully really got in at the right time and sort of like incubated in that alternative comedy space for about 8 years or so. And yeah, it's still something. I was just saying this in another conversation I was having earlier today. Like when I think about it, it's crazy because I'm still just such a fan of all those things and all those people, and some of them ended up in the People's Joker, like Tim Heidecker's in the People's Joker, and Bob Odenkirk and Maria Bamford and Scott Aukerman and all these amazing alternative comedy figures. I can't believe that I got to be a part of it and that got to be like kind of a part of my story as an artist. Like I'm really thankful.
This is such a scary time in our country right now. There's so much going on. There's such uncertainty moving forward. But can you sort of talk about why? I mean, obviously, anytime a film like this reaches the masses or gets out there is vital and important. But can you talk about the importance of having a film like this, also having films like I Saw the TV Glow, Will Harper? Can you sort of talk about the importance of having these films out right now and reaching people at a time where there's so much uncertainty in our country?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because like while I was making the movie, like I don't think I was really thinking about that as much because like I think because it is such a scary time. Like for me, like making this film was this like it was like a playground really, like where I could kind of run away from the real world and just sort of hang out with my friends and play with Batman toys. And I think it wasn't really until like honestly screening it at TIFF, we screened it at TIFF to this like audience of like 600 people. It was
Yeah.
still my favorite screening experience. Like I wish I could remember it more. Like it's such this foggy memory, but like one of the things I do remember is like when I got off stage, I like met this mother of a trans person, and she like came up to me and she was like, "Can I hug you?" And I was like, "Ugh, sure." I mean, like I don't love hugs from strangers all the time, but like it was really like I will do this, and she was hugging me and she like whispered to me like just thank you so much for making this because like I know how to talk to my daughter now. Like I'm getting choked up even just saying that. Like it was the moment that it settled in for me that like I'd done something that wasn't just for me and my friends, that like this is something that could kind of be this bridge to all these different generations of parents and trans people and kids and hopefully like you know people in sort of like mainstream film positions that could kind of see this thing that talks about the trans experience in a funny way and in an honest way that is hopefully palatable. Like I really wanted to make something that showed the trans experience just for what it is, which is it's just a coming of age experience, which all of us have, like whether you're queer or not, like all of us kind of grow up and have to sort of self-actualize. Um, and I never could have fathomed that a parent of a trans person it would resonate with them because I knew trans people would probably like the movie, but I just didn't think about that And you know, like it's been cool like the last, you know, year or two, like watching stuff like Stress Positions and TV Glow and the movies that Alice Mayo McKay's making and Louise Ward you know, has a movie out right now called Castration Movie and there's all these different sort of like trans films that are sort of coming to the surface that are all coming at it from a very unique perspective. Like I think that's the thing that really has value to what's happening right now in queer cinema. You know, especially like when you compare something like The People's Joker and I Saw the TV Glow, which are like two movies that are kind of talking about very similar things. Like sort of like media, finding yourself through a media thing and you know, searching for identity in this sort of like least likely place. And Jane and I, you know, we have a lot of the same influences. Like Jane's obsessed with David Lynch and Richard Kelly and 90s culture and all that stuff. But those two movies couldn't be any different. We're both coming at it from two very unique perspectives. And I think it's so cool that we get to see this demonstration of just how diverse queer identity actually is and all these like unique perspectives and experiences that we can all have. And I think the thing that is really important is there just needs to be more queer and trans and gender diverse creators out there making stuff, both in an indie space and in a mainstream space, because that's how we get films like this is when we're getting the chance to tell our own stories.
You have a question?
A lot of questions for you, but I'm just going to pare it down to two. Um, the First of all, the saturated background. What is your aesthetic? Are you walking around in a comic book? And who were some of the more cutting satirist comics for you as even like a kid that were like where you were like, okay, they're actually funny and they kind of come from a place where I that makes me feel comfortable
Mm.
and they're smart and they get me and I get them.
Wow, two really great questions. I mean, the first, it's so interesting because like I think the aesthetic of the People's Joker, I don't know that I'm gonna ever make a movie that looks like the People's Joker ever again. Like it was kind of this like this the movie was sort of telling me what it was as we were making it because of like just how many you know, I put this call out on Twitter to just anybody that like wanted to sort of help me make this, sort of just expecting like five or six people to reply, and it ended up being like literally hundreds, which was so like it was just felt like the opportunity of a lifetime. Like couldn't think of any other like first time director that like had a crew of like hundreds of people at her disposal. And I think that was when this idea of it really being this kind of like mixed media thing sort of really got cemented to me. It was like it's gonna be like I think the aesthetic of the movie was sort of trying to be this like actual vivid visual representation of just queerness itself and like what these sort of like different you know, because they're like the majority of the people that worked on the movie were trans and or queer and like kind of told everybody just to lean into their specific like aesthetic that they normally work in. I didn't want to micromanage it at all. Like I wanted everybody to sort of lean into their best the best version of like their art. And I think it kind of like created this effect of it just being like a visually queer thing. And having like a real texture to it too, despite the fact that the movie's like the most digitally manipulated movie ever made. Like all of it was shot on blue screen, and you know, there's I think one shot in the movie that we actually shot out in the real world. Like all of all of the sets are created in post production, and I kind of thought of it like almost like something like Who Framed Roger Rabbit or something, where it's like the reality is so thin in this universe that like human beings can be cartoon characters or Legos or stop motion characters and stuff. And uh, to me, it felt like this kind of just demonstration of just like where we're even just at as a world right now. Like with I mean, we're all on a Zoom call right now. Like most of our human interactions are with some sort of avatar of ourself. Like there was, I think, this kind of like almost like VR aspect to it where that we were trying to sort of circle and just like, you know, reflections of self in sort of colorful characters. And then as far as like which comedians like really spoke to me, especially when I was a kid, I was obsessed with George Carlin. Like I was like I think like almost in this like I like had like an innocent crush on him just because like how much truth that guy told. And like I remember being like 13 and hearing his the 7 words you can't say on TV, and then also like just listening to his like sort of like very I mean it's a very like his comedy now is just like always kind of wielded by just the politically like worst people in the planet. And like I think he'd be like rolling in his grave like hearing like people on the right sort of like championing him, because he was always this very like leftist, like anarchist leftist voice that was just kind of talking about like, I mean, his last 2 stand-up specials were barely even comedy. It was just him talking about how like we live in like an oligarchy and like corporations have more power than politicians and stuff. It really I grew up in the suburbs. Like I was an altar server. Like it blew my world apart like hearing an adult like talk about those things. And then like also just like Mr. Show, and I really always loved like silly stuff. And like I remember like coming home from school and watching Kids in the Hall, and that being like a show that like because they did a lot of drag on that show, and the way they did drag was just so specific, where it never felt like they were making fun of women. They were just like, Dave Foley is a beautiful woman when he wears drag. Like it was so I don't know. And it still like is funny and has this like but there's like a softness to it, I guess. Like those were the big ones. And now as an adult, like I'm wearing a Bruce LaBruce shirt today. Like kind of by accident. Like I really like love his sort of approach to genre and irreverence. Like it's been really inspirational to me as an adult. And he's been a kind of a guiding light to me. Both just his art and we've had a few heart to hearts about what it's like having a nervous breakdown while you're making your first film.
It would be great to see if any members have any questions that are attending here.
Also talked with Vera before, or like back during Toronto, and it's been wild following this film and seeing it finally get released, so I can finally explain all the jokes I've been making for the past 2 years.
It's great to see you again, Reuben.
Yes, and I can talk about like how surreal it was getting an award presented by Adrian Brody, but the other presenter, Rachel Brosnahan, is the new Lois Lane. So, so I have to wonder, if the connections are there. Like, has James Gunn seen the film by now? I mean, Colin Farrell's Penguin is he's a trans ally, just like Nathan's Penguin. So I don't know if that is your influence on that, but.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard anything from anybody over there in a long time. Anything complimentary. We had a few more sort of legal conversations as we were releasing the movie. I specifically got told if I keep talking about David Zaslav being a prude that they probably would sue me. So I haven't gotten any. any love letters yet. But I gotta assume the words "the People's Joker" has been uttered by James Gunn at this point, just based off how annoying I am on Twitter. And I know that the Harley Quinn writers room, I know they're big fans of the People's Joker, and it was funny because when I met Rachel, I was so starstruck, like getting up on that stage. Like I don't even really remember what I said to her, and I had no sense of whether or not if her or Adrian Brody had any idea who the hell I was. But yeah, I hope people over there start have checked it out. And either way, like I'm glad they are getting a little bit more brave with the things that they're talking about, like in their movies. I gotta assume some of that has come from there being a very, very gay and very, very trans Joker movie out there right now.
I think Henry has a
Yeah,
question.
Henry.
Yes. Hi. Huge fan and obsessed with the movie. Um, and I'm wondering,
Thank you.
just thinking about this year and how amazing it's been for like trans cinema and trans representation, and then also how horrible it's been politically, as we've been talking about. I'm wondering sort of how we make sense of that broadly, and if we see sort of representation in the arts sphere gaining ground as Trump takes office, and sort of like yeah, just how we wrap our minds around that, or how you specifically wrap your mind around it.
Oh, I have such a difficult time. Well, also thank you, Henry. It's nice to meet you. I have such a difficult time wrapping my head around it, and it's hard to stay positive sometimes. Like I've really had to. Um, I'm still on Twitter almost every day. It's the Catholic in me. I've got to punish. I've always got to punish. But I think like for me, in my healthiest moments, when I kind of see what's happening as it relates in like pop culture, and then like in just the political space, like it's actually very hard for me to be cynical, just because like I think like we're in this kind of wave right now where um the next generation of artists and voters and just citizens are kind of seeing what's happening and seeing how um unfair it is, and what it's doing to, I mean, especially like trans kids all across the states and the UK and stuff. Like it's really dark. But when you look historically just at various like civil rights movements and like the counterculture and like the gay cinema in the early 90s, like coming out of like the AIDS crisis and stuff, like I think we're kind of at this like fever pitch where it's that point where it is darkest before the dawn, if you'll pardon the expression. Like I think we're standing on the other, we're just about to get to the other side of a new world. Like I saw this statistic that uh is distressing, but it was basically kind of breaking down the demographics of transphobia, and like what age groups are actually having a problem with trans people. And strangely, like it's not baby boomers or even like older Gen Xers. It's like millennials. And like they're like it's like right in the middle there. And to me, it's like that's just because of the propaganda machine, and it's just because of like what's happening right now in politics. And like I don't know,
And
like it's pretty hardcore. I don't know if I've articulated anything that I meant to say here, but I feel positive about all of our futures, especially film and TV and all that stuff aside, because I really think we're reaching this like fever pitch of fascism where like, you know, we're not going to be able to take it anymore. And I think people are starting to really wake up to the sort of injustices that are happening. I mean, even like I had a conversation with my parents. I was just back home, and like my mom said something where it's just like, I can't believe what's happening to trans kids right now. And it blew my mind because like my mom isn't a transphobe, but she's somebody who like I don't think she knew what a transsexual was until she found out her daughter was one. So it was like it's reaching people in this way that it didn't before, both because of the media representation and because of how fucked it is, if you'll pardon the expression. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
Hmm.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
So, Vera, when we were talking earlier, when asking you about your future plans, first thing you said was downtime. It has been a very long year for you. And again, congratulations. You've had a lot going on, and kudos to all that's going on. But once you get that downtime, what are some other professional things you're going to be working on?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I'm editing Alice Mayo McKay's next feature film. She's like one of my very best friends, and she's my favorite living director, like working right now. I just think she's fantastic. And I edited her most recent film, Carnage for Christmas, which is now available on Shudder. And I'm editing her next one, which is so tonally different than anything she's ever done before. It's like her most mature film, and it's unlike anything I've ever edited before, which, to be quite honest, is very scary to me. Like I'm not going to be able to rely on my old tricks of like fart sound effects and whooshes. But it's also exciting because like I think we're both going to just be really pushing ourselves as artists, and I'm excited for people to see that. And in the directing and writing space, I've got a few features I'm trying to get made right now, and we'll see what sticks first. The first one is a cosmic horror movie called Dead Name that is another like coming of age story, but very kind of grounded in this like horror Americana space. Like I kind of keep describing it like it's almost like the movie My Girl with Dan Aykroyd if it was directed by like Stuart Gordon. And there was like a ton of sex magic in it. And then the other movie I'm working on is called My Only Sunshine, which is a heist movie that was actually like in development hell for years. And it was this script that I got sent towards the end of 2023. And I got sent so many scripts that year. And most of them were, just not for me. It was a very interesting thing because I'd never had that experience of people like sending me stuff to like help develop or like potentially direct. But when I got this script, it was like it blew my mind just how much I could resonate with something that I didn't write. And I'm currently working on my draft of it right now. I'm actually like going to be working on it today because I'm a little behind on our deadlines. So going to be sending that out soon, and so we'll see which one of those sticks, and if not one of those two, like something else. Like I've really I knew I had wanted to make a movie my entire life, but didn't really know what I wanted to say. And when I made The People's Joker, like the second I started making it, all these other ideas started kind of bubbling to the surface. So, I've been a writing fiend, when it comes to films. So, I think the next couple years are going to be very busy, and for better or worse, y'all are going to be hearing me talk for a while, and yeah, hopefully making a lot more movies.
We're very, very excited about that. The film is The People's Joker. Vera, thank you so much for this film. Thanks for talking to us today. It's been so enjoyable, and we look forward to what's coming next from you.
Cool.